Whole book is you. Whole book is you. Whole book is you. Whole book is you. fine. Is there a WebEx? I don't have my WebEx. Would you?
How are you? Very good, thank you.
How are you?
How are you?
Yeah. I will never turn down a hug.
How are you?
I will never turn down a Right? Good pick, right? Oh my God! Right? Hi.
How are you?
I'm good. How are you? Air hug.
Right? How are you? Good to see you.
How's it
How are
going?
Great.
you?
Yep. When is it okay when you present if we plug into your HDMI port?
Let me share.
Okay.
Yep, long enough. Doesn't let
I have a clicker.
Nope. It's a feature that's not on. I don't know. I just wanted to be able to share my camera of the audience. Started.
Oh, did you get, are you filming them or do you want me to turn mine around?
I turned mine around.
Okay.
Okay, it is 3:11 on Monday, November 15th, 2021. It's time for a meeting with Canyon County and City of Caldwell regarding the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency's proposal for a new revenue allocation area. I am Commissioner Smith. Also present is Commissioners White and Van Beek. Monica Reeves is our deputy clerk today. Joining us for Canyon County is our deputy Commissioner Wesley, as well as Director Folk from Development Services. We've also invited Doug Waterman, who is representing the City of Caldwell, to join us. And Monica, at some point, I think he's going to, are you able to connect to our screen? Or do you? Okay, good. You do have an HDMI. Do you have an HDMI plug on that? Were you able to connect to our screen? All right. We are live streaming this. Mayor Nancola, we're hoping is able to join us possibly a little bit. But at this time, I do just want to, today is a workshop. I requested this meeting so that we had an opportunity for Caldwell to share the plan. I requested this meeting so that we had an opportunity. Caldwell had tried to pass the urban renewal district a year or 2 years ago, and this is a similar plan. 2 years ago, I want to disclose, I worked for Destination Caldwell, but I had a seat at the table for economic development, and I was actively involved. Steve Foltz was also a part of that team. And so, just for disclosures, I was actively involved with urban renewal, and I understand the value of it, and I appreciate it. And I wanted an opportunity for our elected officials and our affected agents to be able to ask questions about that. One of the important things to this new plan that I was a part of is the Canyon County Jail, the future jail, was planned for that area, and had asked Caldwell to consider that, and they are a great partner, and so this plan includes that provision, as well as possibly our first funding source for a piece of that construction. And so I think that that's really important for us all to consider, moving forward. I also witnessed, what Sky Ranch and, Caldwell and Nampa's Urban Renewal District, have done for the growth of their communities, which subsequently is the growth of Canyon County. And, economic development is not easy. We are competing on a national, global scale. And, it's very different when you have the opportunity to sit across from a developer in an urban renewal district and be able to recruit. And so there's a lot of value to it, and I'm excited to hear about how, this plan, considers those things and is a fair partnership between Caldwell and Canyon County. So with that, I'm going to turn it over to you, Doug, and, share with us what you've got planned. So with that,
I've already done
I'm going to turn it over to you, Doug, and, share with us what you've got planned.
And Mark's actually going to take over. So
Okay. Mark, if you sit there, there's no audio, and you have to really project your voice.
I don't want to do that.
Okay, then, Mark, if you sit there, there's no audio, and you have to really project your voice.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and good afternoon, Commissioners. I want to introduce a little bit of kind of how we have approached as a team at the Urban Renewal Agency, presenting this to you, and sort of maybe where questions might be directed when we get to that point. I've had the benefit of Mr. Waterman's assistance. He's been heavily involved in the actual crafting of the plan, what I call the front end of the plan. So if you've got detailed questions about the text of the plan or the law, I'll probably defer to him. Mr. Wade and Carol Mitchell, the Finance Director, are here to talk about numbers. So they know about taxes and feasibility study and how this project might go forward and pay for the infrastructure development that is targeted there. Rob McDonald, Brent Orton are here that can talk specifically to individual projects and the estimates for project costs and how those were derived. And then we have a couple of representatives from the development community that can speak to the value of urban renewal in terms of decisions to locate significant industrial and commercial development. And then we're going to have some comment from the city's economic development team. Part of that is Mr. Foltz, who for years had been part of Team City, now is part of the county, but is obviously very familiar with how urban renewal works and the benefits of it. And so if you've been following my comments, you probably recognize that there aren't any questions that you could ask me and go further out. That's not true. Feel free to ask me and interject questions at any time, and I'll do my questions. I do carry Mayor Nanco's apologies for not being. His wife had a Medicare procedure this morning. He was for this afternoon. He thought very hard about how he could make it here nonetheless. And although he's had lots of wise ideas for the city over the years, that was not one. And so I think we all as a team leaned on him to stay away. If he can appear digitally, that's great, but he obviously has to support the team leaned on him to send his regrets from him. If he can appear digitally, that's great. But what we're looking for today is certainly to present a plan and to answer questions that you have. We are also looking for approval of the intergovernmental agreement to present counties and to approval of the plan going forward, which is of course required because a significant portion of this area lies outside of the city limit. We're also looking for partnership with the county on this. And by that, I mean the developments that could go forward here, the infrastructure that will attract them, and the increasing tax base with quality development over here. By that, I mean industrial development and commercial development, which brings not only that great tax base, but also the services and the job creators too, for the residents of the county. That plan primarily serves this area, and those developments benefit the county in the same way that they benefit the city. Whether those properties are outside of the city limits or inside the city limits, the county will generate its real property tax revenue and personal property tax revenue off of the developments that we anticipate being located here. I've been asked specifically to thank Brian Zender for his help in terms of providing some of the information necessary to craft that feasibility study. I think, I understand that Brian's not a big fan of providing the information necessary. And he's not wrong. We understand those objections. They were very front and center 2 years ago as we came through this process. I don't pretend to be able to convince everybody that this is a great idea and we'll all leave on the same page. But we do see this as a partnership with the county, and we see the county benefiting from what's going on here on the same page. But we do see this as a partnership with I'm going to give the 30,000 foot view and try to move relatively quickly to some of the other details. But really, what the city and the agency are looking for is to build on the success that's been realized at Sky Ranch. There is a certain amount of pride in what has occurred out there, not for me, but for all of the city economic development teams, the city council, the Urban Renewal Agency commissioners, the county that has supported that. And there's a certain extent to which we're inclined to be kind of upfront about the pride we've had in that point this scoreboard. The current urban renewal area will sunset next year, and it will add $1 billion of property tax increase during the lifetime next year. That is remarkable, and it blows away all the projections that we have for that area. And we believe very strongly the same thing is accomplished in this area, and it blows away all Sky Ranch is out of room. There is no more room for significant developers to come in. And we're looking for continuing what has been started there. Significant developers to come in. And one of the important factors, I know there's lots of questions and concerns about tax dollars and project costs and philosophical concerns about urban renewal. One thing that I would ask the commissioners to keep in mind is, and one of the things that maybe gets lost in the noise sometimes is the well-paying jobs that are created by these industrial users. One of the things that maybe those well-paying jobs sometimes provide for families, and strong families provide strong kids. Those strong kids provide all kinds of great benefits for our county going forward. But those benefits are, well, those benefits are nice for our county going forward. The strong families that can come from secure jobs, good benefits, health insurance, that's an end in itself. That's what government should be. And this will help. This new area will help in that, in the same way that the existing Sky Ranch has helped in that. Job creation, well-paid jobs, and significant benefits to go along. In the same way that the existing. All right. The area that you see on the TV was identified in 2019, of course, as we pursued this before. Is an area really that parts of it are within a mile of downtown Caldwell, which was first developed 130 years ago. This area is not developed in any significant sense, even though it's got that close proximity. That's because of the barriers to infrastructure. The river, primarily. There are also canals that go along the river under the jurisdiction of different agencies that need to be crossed. There's limited access highway that borders it. For the most part, on the north side. There's limited access highway. There are closer to the river on the mine side. These things all make it very difficult to extend the infrastructure that's necessary for these industrial users. And really the goal of the plan is to find a way to incentivize through tax increment development of the infrastructure so that we can market these areas as shovel-ready for industrial use. There's a reason why this has not developed. And it's because that infrastructure isn't there and there's not a cost-effective way to get it. And urban renewal can bridge that. It's because, no pun intended, can bridge that gap. And that's really why this area has been identified. It is the perfect spot for another Sky Ranch. As an example, and I don't want to steal anybody's thunder, but the agency has received responses to a request for proposals for the final property that's available in Sky Ranch, the 23-acre site. 8 proposals have been received from developers who want to build industrial buildings on that property. Buildings up to 485,000 square feet. No final decision's been made on how that's going to be awarded, but I think it stands for the proposition for 2 things. Number one, there's substantial interest an industrial development in Caldwell. And number two, we need an urban renewal agency to create shovel-ready projects, shovel-ready properties for them to develop on. There is no reason why those 8 users couldn't go out into this area and try to develop, except for lack of access, lack of utilities, lack of infrastructure, the very things that we have proposed as projects in this urban renewal plan. I know there's a couple of concerns that have been raised, and I want to address those briefly. One is, county's going to have to do without the increment that's going to be used to fund these projects, right? And so there's a base assessment goal that's set, and taxes will continue to be received on that. But the increase in property value will go to fund the urban renewal project. So does that present a burden for the county? Mr. Wade can speak to this in more detail. My understanding is that a fraction of 1% of revenue that is generated from this particular area for the county right now. My understanding is that a fraction, pulling it out is not going to have a significant impact on budget. Pulling it out. The other part of that is we'll still get that increment, whatever is being generated out there now, which is low because of the development, we'll still get that increment. You're still going to get that out there now. In addition, as those properties come out of ag exemption, the increased property value for the dirt, not for the improvements, but for the dirt, is added to the base assessment. So taxes will increase even with the reallocation area added to the base assessment. My bet is they'll increase much faster than they would without urban renewal there. So there will be tax growth in that area. My bet is the plan is also substantially for low burden uses. There are some areas that are probably going to be appropriate for high-end residential around reclaiming ponds and that kind of thing. But significantly, industrial and commercial developments don't generate burden on law enforcement services or fire services. And then finally, Caldwell's actively looking for an annexation tax for these properties. We think that we're going to get there soon after this is approved. And as those properties then are annexed into the city, it of course alleviates some of the burden the county would have for providing services. And as those properties then are annexed, so yes, there is going to be a reallocation of tax increment dollars. No, we do not think that it's going to adversely affect the county's taxes in any way. It's going to be a reallocation of tax increment in the near term. No, we do not. Long term, it's going to help profoundly. And again, Sky Ranch is our exemplar for that state. Long term, it's going to help profoundly. The other argument is that all this development will come anyway. That is simply not true. And listen to your industry folks on that. The reason it's not developing is because of the kinds of things that urban renewal plans to do. My evidence for that is 8 proposals for a 23-acre site in Sky Ranch with virtually no activity out in this area. Some activity contingent upon approval of Sky Ranch. There is some interest out there, but it is contingent upon approval. Some activity. All right. Thank you for listening. In conclusion, we are looking for approval, and we are looking for partnership with the county. Part of that is the logical request that, frankly, we should have thought of as an agency about having a county representative on the urban renewal board. That makes good sense, not just for this area, but for the other projects that the city has and the other sorts of areas that might be considered in the future. But we're also asking, again, for that to develop into a partnership. We're interested in what you have to say and here to learn as well as to sort of partnership structure. So that concludes my remarks. Thank you for listening, and I would certainly stand for questions.
Thank you, Mark. Can you add a little bit about the infrastructure that's lacking for the development of that area? Specifically, it's a bridge. Is it the big bridge going from Canyon Hill, or is it the bridge going across the Boise River on the Simplot side, the west side? Canyon Hill, or is it the east side? West side. Sorry, Simplot side.
Yeah, I think, and again, the specific traffic plan, I'm going to defer to Mr. McDonald and Mr. Porter. But it is access generally. Both of those bridges will help in that regard. And of course, as the cities grow, the crossing of not just the railroad tracks and of course, as the cities grow, a heavy lift crossing and urban renewal, certainly railroad tracks and of course, as the cities grow, a heavy lift
The other infrastructure besides roads would be getting gas, water, and sewer, and electricity. And those are all required to recruit any type of new business. And they want them at the site shovel ready. And those are all required, just speaking from experience, but, so that would provide for, this funding would provide an opportunity. How else would that normally be funded? So that would provide for, this funding would provide an opportunity. How else
There's a
would
reason
that
it's not
normally
there.
be funded?
Certainly, if you're talking about water and sewer, that would be a burden on the ratepayers in the city of Caldwell, and try and extend that on a speculative basis for other developers to extend it and get reimbursement agreement ratepayers. Some of that might be available to gas. Bottom line is, those are costs that our private industry partners can pay if there is some mechanism for them to do those costs that our private industry partners can pay.
Any other questions?
All right, I'll turn it over to Elton.
Any other questions?
All right, I'll turn it over to Elton.
Yeah. Good afternoon, Commissioners.
Good afternoon, Mr. Waite.
Good to see you. Good afternoon. All three of you together.
Good afternoon,
I would like
Mr. Waite.
to, before I start, just explain what I was asked to do again. The feasibility study is required by statute. It is to determine the probability of the funding of all project costs based on the revenue received. And so I took the approach that if I could get good information from the sources that had it, I could put all that together in a spreadsheet and let it calculate out and determine what the data said from those sources. So Carol Mitchell and working with Brian Sender provided information on levy rate and tax codes, working with Brian Sender, construction values for the top 10 projects in Canyon County since 2017, which was of significant importance when it looked at what taxable values are on the rolls right now. Taxable values for the Sky Ranch, for that area that is in the current urban renewal area for Caldwell. Also relied upon information from the city engineering department and Rob McConnell on project costs that he has generated based on values that he receives from bids and projects that he completed in the recent past. And then from other feasibility studies in other parts of this valley, when it talks about how values are determined and what processes to use to look at the values of the property. So I converted the information on values into cost per acre for construction values, and looked at the projects in the top 10, which would include Simplot construction, 3 major apartment complexes, and the Amazon building, and then other larger commercial and industrial developments. So that information was very valuable. So I gathered that information, made the calculations I need to make on it, and double checked the numbers, and then put it in a spreadsheet. And what happened when I ran the very first run is that it created a model saying for all properties that would develop into large industrial or commercial, north of the Boise River and the railroad track would be funded. The high priority items would be funded with discounted dollars to today's value, and that discounted portions would be funded. So when I saw that, it's okay, this has a value because of the type of industry that we're looking to attract there. The comment that I received from the city was they wanted to have investments come that were supportive of the agricultural community in Canyon County. And that is what the first project consists of, that has been in discussions with Caldwell and for the last year or so. Would be an addition and discussions with benefit to the agricultural community. So with that, I'd like to take a few moments now and talk to you about the feasibility study, which goes along with this project. And it is attachments. You may have, do you all have copies of that?
Can you zoom in? Yeah, right there, and that way Grit can read it.
Yeah, that's good. Oh, that helps.
Yeah, right there, and that way Grit can read it.
So, I'm on page 5, the introduction. And there are approximately 1,875 acres in this urban allocation area, of which 1,090 are being targeted for the first phase development, which would continue through the first 3 quarters of the urban renewal agency. So this is the area that borders north and south on Highway 2026, up to and including the extension of Highway 44 and an 80-acre parcel north of that, and then down to the Boise River, including those gravel pits and those mining areas Mr. Rambo is working on, and then down to the Boise River. So of that 1,875 acres, 1,090 of it are in the revenue model as potentially being developed, and the infrastructure costs for streets and utilities being paid for by developers and reimbursed over the remaining urban renewal, up to but not to exceed the value of the improvement that they paid for. There is no interest being allocated to the developers in this feasibility study. They need to look hard at that when they look at their project. So in this feasibility study, they need to look hard at that when they look at their project. I'd like to go to page 6. In the middle of that page, there's a market assessment, page 6, designation, industrial and commercial development projections over the 20-year term of Caldwell Urban Renewal, partially based on key economic indicators detailed in the Canyon County 2020 Comprehensive Annual Financial Report, 2011 to 2020, and additionally, demand for large shovel-ready building sites in the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency area exceeds supply, which has been mentioned already. In the revenue model, the projections for the CNURA increments property tax revenue utilize projections from large development taxable assessed values since 2017 and actual assessed values added to the property tax rolls by the county assessor countywide and for the Sky Ranch Business Park used in the market assessment rolls by the county assessor. And then in the prioritized street infrastructure data, this is information that was provided and it expands upon the market assessment and provides a roadmap for future development, identifying necessary and probable public improvements presented in attachment 4. The street infrastructure plan is provided by the Caldwell Engineering Department as part of this report. Project cost is document prepared by the Caldwell Engineering Department, detailing project costs associated with the desired improvement referenced in the Urban Renewal Framework Plan and the Caldwell North Urban Renewal Area Street and Infrastructure Plan. And then the feasibility study is what I'm about to describe to you. So these particular reports were used, the data was refined and reviewed and deemed to be accurate, and then it was put into the feasibility study. All right, I'd like to go to page 7. The assessed value of this property provided by the county is $36,003,565. And you see that part of it's in personal property, commercial, industrial, residential, and environmentally sensitive areas south of the Boise River on the west portion. And the levy rates for this area are included, and they were provided by Canyon County, and the tax codes that are involved there. Those have been used. They were provided, and an estimate of the value of those have been used, of the revenue coming from those levy rates was used in this plan as a fixed levy rate during the 20-year period, and it started off with only a 1.5% deviation from the actual numbers. So it is extremely accurate. 1.5% deviation from the actual. Now, on the page 8, extremely accurate. 1.5% deviation from the. Now, on the page, there were 7 large industrial projects provided by the county in years 2017 to 2021. And you can see that they ranged in value per acre from 6.5 million, 7.9 million, down to 653,000 per acre. This was significant when I look at how this was compared to the types of properties and developments that are expected to happen in the Caldwell Urban Renewal area. On the next page, there were 3 more from the county top 10 that were apartment complexes. And this was extremely helpful based on the fact that we may have some apartments developed out there close to the freeway. And this was extremely helpful. Those were 2.6 million per acre from apartments. And it gave us a size of what types of, how large these apartment complexes are. And then in the Sky Ranch analysis, we had apartment complexes based on the acre size, less than 1 acre all the way up to 20 to 50 acres. We show that we have in excess of $1 million in the majority of those developments. And the 2 from 5 to 10 acres and 10 to 20 acres are in $800,000 per acre or $377,000 per acre. This made it a lot easier to review than to try to do a square foot per building when you're essentially coming down to the same value that is the levy rate. So these values came from the taxable levy rate, best value. Then in the Sky Ranch commercial, the highest value model. This is the development that has the highest taxable value on Canyon County. They're newer, they're more recent, and the average of these is what I use for industrial development in the Caldwell Urban, and the average is about 1.9 million for industrial development. The next page, on page 10, shows how many industrial projects and commercial and residential would be developed by quarter. 10 shows county of 20 projects that are considered high priority in that area. And then also by acres of the 1,090 acres, it shows how many acres per quarter are developed of the 1,090 acres. This brought me to the question of how are we going to do this? How, knowing what the folks did for the city and county others when doing that, how would I do this? This is a large task. This is the heaviest assignment for the city. Then I learned that Canyon County has hired an individual to help with economic development in the county. The city has one. And I was assured, I felt more comfortable with having the resources of both the county and the city working on this project. I was assured to help bring the best type of development to the area that would be approved by the area. The best type of development to the area. All right, let's go to page 11, the revenue generation. We have an assessed year and a tax year. The first year is where we got our assessment, the assessed year of 2021, and the tax year when the taxes were collected in 2022. We are showing no revenue in the tax year for the first 3 years because we're only showing the revenue here from development or redevelopment of property. There is no revenue here from increased value for accessory appraisal or for inflation. This was simply to show what the development would provide against the cost that the development has to pay. Also, it just doesn't happen overnight. there will be two full years to find the right developer to begin and complete construction before the tax rolls begin returning revenue to the agency. So we expect the first revenue to return in the year 2025 for this project. And I would expect that the economic development team in Kansas City will have and I would expect development in line in different stages and processes of development waiting for their opportunity to begin construction. Over the life process of development. So basically every year there is a new development coming online. Thanks to the work of the economic development team from the city of Caldwell. This is used in several feasibility studies that I looked at as consistent ways to describe it, but in reality there may be a standard in the first 5 years of this plan. But we're not projecting that. We're projecting a workable time frame for these projects to be developed. So the base value revenue on the fourth column of the 36 million base value, 381,000 is only 1.5% higher than what's actually happened based on the estimated levy that I have in this plan. If that stays with the county, and as has been mentioned, any land increases that happen during this development will also come to the county and the other taxing increases. So this stays with those taxing districts that are currently receiving that revenue to the county and the other taxing increases.
LJ, I totally respect you. We wanted to let people have questions. Are you almost done?
I can hurry.
Okay.
Or we can take questions now, your choice.
If you are almost, definitely I want you to be able to finish.
Okay.
Sorry.
I'd like being heard.
If you are
Thank you.
almost, definitely I want you to
So
be able to
what happens here is when we put in the property that would be developed at the values that are already on the county, we're showing that over the 20-year period that would be developed, the value that's brought in is almost $2 billion, $1,990 million. The taxable value that's decreased is $2,388,000, and the gross revenue, the taxable for last year is decreased $1,388,000, and the gross revenue, the taxable last year, the net cumulative taxable value is $1,987,000. And the gross incremental revenue is $173 million, is $1,908 million, and the gross incremental in total, and the last year is $13,877 million. So we're taking in total, and the last year is a revenue of $381,000 for taxing districts together with this development to a revenue of almost $14 million for taxing districts together with this development. All right, and then on page 12, I'll conclude with this. These revenues have been discounted at 4% back to the different prices so that we can compare what the project costs are to the revenue generated. And the bottom figure 4A is the net revenues. Those are the revenues that will be available to pay project costs. Are $156 million total. The discounted rate is $91,860,000. That is adequate to pay the high priority project cost. And if the urban renewal area outperforms any of the high priority projects, so with that, my conclusion was not only is this probable, it should be our goal, it should be what we line up to do with our economic development team. It's to turn this project, this area into a mecca for industry that will support our ag community. And this area provide good jobs for industry that will support our
Thank you. Do you have when I opened, I was talking about the gel. Did you do any projections on specifically how that might help Canyon County? Projections on the agency, specific gel that might help.
Number one, I need to know what the county plan is And on one of the exhibits, it shows that the Canyon County project.
Where you at?
Schedule, I'm on the very Canyon County. One of the attachments, appendix, I'm on appendix 1. One of the attachments, appendix, I'm on appendix 1. This includes the
Like the second to last.
40 acres south of the county property, which is the current gun range.
Like the second to last.
40 acres south. Okay, and so there it is. Very first page. Go back up one more. Okay, and so there it is. Okay, industrial, Canyon County and the Isaac Walton property. That doesn't start until 2033 plan, so there's time to get together and develop. That doesn't start the plan, what it is you need to have happen out of time. We have not taken liberty to say it would be a jail of this size. No, it is for the county to determine what that is, and then we look at how we can help. The infrastructure is included in what gets paid back. There is revenue to put the infrastructure in on that property. So I would assume that the urban renewal would do that as part of the project. So I would straight infrastructure about it.
So from your experience, if you're saying, I would go as far as saying that you're very helpful at creating funding mechanisms for projects. You and I work together on funding Indian Creek Plaza. So this is indicating 2033. What does that really mean for an urban renewal agency? If we were able to find a mechanism to fund a jail on that site within the next few years,
The project moves ahead. It comes to 2025, 2026.
it just needs to, so the date, the year isn't necessarily the important part. It just needs to be identified in the
The
plan.
year is
It just
conservative.
needs, so the date, the
If it
year
takes that
isn't
long to get there,
necessarily the
it's okay,
important
but
part.
if
It
it comes
needs to
sooner,
be identified
it
in
can
the
be
plan.
done.
It just needs,
So this 24 acre county has, is definitely prime property for what you're trying to do. It'd be right on the main thoroughfare and would have utilities to it, in the first pass. So as quickly as you can get there, it'll be a project that you can move forward.
and it would be reviewed by the agency.
As quickly as you can get there, bonding is scheduled at this time, which means that if the agency needed to provide infrastructure for the streets, which will come in later, it could be paid with bond. Agency needed to provide
Okay.
the renewal bond for West County Avenue, it could be paid with bond. Agency needed to provide.
Okay, thank you. Who else was a part of your presentation team? Thank
So
you.
at this point, I have a couple of members of the development
Who else
here.
was a part of your presentation team?
Mindful of their time. I have a couple of members of the development. Commissioner, could I invite, Mr. Lake, would come up and introduce himself, and then Mr. Lake, you're Mr. Peterson, wants to come up and Mr. Lake, and follow that, great.
It's up to you. If you sit there, you have to really project your voice very loudly, otherwise sit by Mr. Waterman. If you sit there, you have to really project your voice very loudly, otherwise sit by Mr.
My name's Aaron Lake. I own a company called AT Industrial. We are, as an industrial development company called AT, and currently, let's say we just finished what I believe to be the largest industrial building built speculatively in the Treasure Valley. Treasure Valley, 265,000 feet. And we started construction today on a new building, 304,000 feet. The largest ground construction, and we have a sister building planned next door that's also 304,000 feet. We own other real estate in the area, and I think cumulatively we'll be up to about 1 million square feet in Caldwell. So, that's just some context of I think they asked me to speak. And I can say in no uncertain terms that we were attracted to Caldwell over other areas in Boise because of the advanced investments made in Sky Ranch. The fact that it was built ready, and then in addition to that, the city of Caldwell's commitment to turn around our permit in short order. The fact that it was built ready, and then it incentivized us to, versus looking at permit closer to town. I think, let me take a step back and say, there is demand in the area for additional space. I fully expect our current building to be studied before it's there is demand. And there is interest in Caldwell in particular. That is because it is ready. And we are looking at other locations in the greater area, closer to towns, that are maybe arguably more attractive than this particular location we're talking about, that we've been focused on, more attractive than this. And I think in order for us to be attracted to go kind of further outside of town, beyond Caldwell, it's going to take something like advanced investment in infrastructure and that ability to beyond Caldwell. So from my perspective, I'm absolutely supportive of this effort. I think it's critical for the area to be successful and feasible. And I think you're going to struggle without a candidate for the area to be successful and feasible.
Thank you. Any questions?
I think you're going to struggle without a candidate.
Mr. Lake, right?
Yes.
Thank you.
Thanks. Do you have any questions or?
I think we're good for now. Mr. Lake, right? Welcome.
Yes.
Thank you.
Do you have any questions or?
I think we're good for now.
Thank you for having me. My name is Tom Peterson. I'm the Chief Development Officer and General Counsel at Fall Ventures Office. Thank you for having me. And just, it's a privilege to be able to share just a couple of quick thoughts. I couldn't agree with Mr. Lake more. I jotted down a few notes as Mr. Hilke was speaking, and, as it relates to urban renewal, there is certainly the benefit of infrastructure and the jobs, the increased tax base, but I also think there's a residual benefit that really is hard to quantify, hard to monetize what can happen when urban renewal is tapped into. My partner, Tommy Alquist, and I talk about this all the time. And Sky Ranch is a perfect example. The dedication that was allocated of urban renewal dollars to allow that to build, the benefits of that just keep on giving back. And evidenced by the fact that just across the street, we have what's called the North Ranch development, which is 150 acres of mixed-use development, primarily industrial, but also some commercial, some ancillary service and retail. Tomorrow morning at that site, we're going to have the D&B groundbreaking. We would not be doing that without the urban renewal that started at Sky Ranch. Because Sky Ranch is built out, as we have users and tenants who are showing interest. They look at Sky Ranch and they see the cohesion, they see what's been developed, they see the potential and the opportunities. And so compared to other locations in the valley, they want to be there. And then, of course, D&B, this other warehousing and industrial uses, ICU branch will come shortly thereafter. So I think that as we look at the benefits of the urban renewal range, it's hard to really grasp and put our minds around the residual benefit that keeps on giving. We have, just as Mr. Lake indicated, interestingly, his company and ours, we're in some ways competitors, but in a lot of ways, we're trying to come to the same result. And that is quality development that builds communities, that inspires excellence, that leads to wage-paying jobs, to market-rate economies of scale. And we're seeing that out as Sky Ranch should be enhanced with North Ranch. What's being discussed today was only serve to further that down the road. The return on investment is seen tomorrow morning and continuing thereon. We have users and tenants, who are coming to this market from California and from Oregon, from Washington, from Colorado, from Salt Lake City. There is such an increased demand for industrial, and as we tour the market with our perspective, partners, they're coming to this location, they're coming to this site because of the shovel-ready attractiveness to it. But as was stated by Mr. Hilty, space at Sky Ranch is running out. Well, space at North Ranch has run out. We haven't broken ground yet. It's all spoken for because of the shovel-ready attractiveness of that site. That's what puts Caldwell a leg up, and Canyon County, frankly, from our other sites, which are desirable. As was already stated, there are other sites closer to the air source, which is Boise Meridian. But we drive right through those with our tenants and prospective investors to come here because of what the urban renewal can provide. And so, if Caldwell, Canyon County, in my opinion, want to keep the leg up that it already has on its bigger neighbors, Meridian and Boise, this is the way to do it. And we are supportive of it. I think it's necessary, and just as a partner in the community, we will do our part to be a good neighbor, but that urban renewal component is such a key to make industrial work. So, those are the thoughts I wanted to share. Certainly don't need to, but would stand for any questions that there are.
Thank you, John. I have a question. One might say that DMB, their corporate headquarters are already in Caldwell, correct? Thank you, John. I have a question. Is it true that they were looking to leave Caldwell? Corporate headquarters are already in Caldwell, correct?
I don't know how public that is, but that could have been at play.
I was at the table, it was at play. And I'm so happy that they picked Caldwell. But so I guess my point is, like, you guys in economic development, you work with a lot of, we're competing globally. But we also have the potential to lose our own businesses that we already have because they grow, and where do they grow to? And so oftentimes what you find is, a company like DMB, they could have picked anywhere else to move their corporation to. And we were able to compete. And if we weren't able to compete, I know for a fact, they would have found somewhere else that was able to provide what we were able to provide and keep them at home.
That's exactly right. And not only are they staying at home, but they're expanding, that big site where it's not just a retail store, but it's warehouse and distribution facilities. It's, again, market rate jobs and, a community feel or pride where, D&B here, it's that sort of residual snowball I'm talking about where now others are going to want to be here because they see the success of D&B and they think there's a model there. We want to be a part of this too. And that is what we're finding with our other investors and perspective of D&B. And they think there's a model there.
Thank you.
We want to be a part of this too. And that is what we're finding.
Anybody else? Ready for questions? Thank you.
Commissioner Smith, are you hoping to move into like a general Q&A?
I told, for our elected officials, I would like them to have some time to just ask.
Commissioner Smith, it's okay if economic development has
A minute? Yeah.
5 minutes to wrap up.
Yeah.
It's okay. Obviously, if there's questions about projects, we've got engineering and public works here to answer those. I think that we can choose some of these sort of summarize about projects. We've got engineering and public works here to answer those. That may be Mr. Fultz.
You're not on the team anymore, but you're on a good team.
But Mr. Fultz.
Steve would still be a great person to wrap it up. You're not on the team anymore, but you're on a good team. Steve would still be a great person to wrap it up.
Some of the same type of commentary that's useful for framing, but we'll have our issues in general. Some of the same.
Thanks, Steve.
And Madam Chair, Commissioners, again, thank you for this opportunity. It's been a long journey, and I've been Madam Chair, Commissioners, economic development opportunity. It's been for more than 30 years in Indiana. I've been in Idaho and economic development as well. They have different names, but basically the same thing in different states. Indiana is redevelopment commission or something a little different, but it all is basically district redevelopment and revenue allocation areas. Sky Ranch was an interesting one for us in that we saw very little development for a long time. During the recession, we had an opportunity to sit with the development team and we said, okay, what what we want to be, what should be. The thing of discussions was decided was, we were manufacturing food processing, and we weren't ashamed of it. And so through that process, the development team again with Caldwell sat down and worked through the process. I do want to say, in all honesty, that it was a partnership and continues to be a partnership between, in this case, the city of Caldwell, the Caldwell Urban Renewal Agency, and Canyon County. While it would be terrific to say Caldwell did it all on their own, they did not. And if it wasn't for the partnership we actually had with the county, many of those projects would not have gone to commission. At the time, I do know that former commissioner, now Mayor Rule, served on that urban renewal board for many, many years, had some very good input on behalf of the county through that process. And that helped us, I think, in many ways, working cooperation with the county through that process. What we saw was, and just to kind of echo what Aaron Lake talked here, was that the issue continues to be shovel-ready ground. We heard that from the Boise Valley Economic Partnership. We heard that from Idaho Commerce, that when they brought a prospect out for consideration, the land needed to be ready for development. It's kind of interesting how things have evolved in economic development over the 30-plus years that I've been doing it, and that there used to be quite a lag time in many regards as they making decisions on trying to find a location for a site. Now, in today's world, the site selectors tend to narrow it down pretty tightly, and then when they do come in, they make a decision, they're ready to get going pretty quickly. I will divulge some, but not too much. Prior to this meeting, there was another meeting that I did attend for a prospect that is considering Canyon County. This prospect is in the food processing area. While I was there was a number of questions regarding this urban renewal proposal, this revenue allocation area. This project is looking at more than 70 sites throughout the U.S. They have narrowed it down to 2. Caldwell, Canyon County is one of the 2 that they are considering. They're looking at building 1.1 million square feet of food processing manufacturing area, approximately $500 million of investment, 400 plus jobs with average wage around $52,000 per year per job. From an economic development standpoint, this would be, in my opinion, probably a top 10 economic development project in the United States, not just for Idaho, but for the entire United States project of that magnitude. Again, what we're hearing from them is that issue of is there tax increment financing opportunities to help offset some of the costs that they're be looking at incurring for the infrastructure needed. Again, power, water, sewer, and gas. So that comes in very, very important element. Water, sewer, and gas, and for them to do one of the things that we want to take a very strong look at is the partnership and an understanding and a clear understanding as we look at the transfer of powers and how those documentation and the plan works in cooperation at the county. I think it's very, very important we take a look at that element and that we have further discussions regarding that. And I know time is of the essence, but I think that there's still other things we need to take a look at in regards to that element that the county does. I think in addition to having a voice at the seat, and I think that's very, very important. I think, again, county general partnership has been introduced around here already, and from an economic development, from a land use perspective, from a number of different perspectives, that we have a clear understanding of what that partnership is and how it comes about. So when we look at some of these elements and these efforts, that's going to play a key role in that partnership. As stated earlier, there is currently no pathway of annexation, so the partnership, I think, becomes even stronger as we move through that process. From an economic development standpoint, again, TIF is not something that has been around, I think, probably since the 80s, and it's been an important and useful tool throughout for economic development. I come from a wonderful community. I was born and raised in a wonderful community in Kentucky. And I wondered sometimes, well, this is a great community, people just come here. They don't just come here. And as much as I love and have Idaho has become a home of mine, and it's a wonderful place, people don't come just because of that. So I know many site selectors look at a number of things. They're looking at presenting recommendations to their clients and incentives. Unfortunately, sometimes, unfortunately, play a role. And so that does, in fact, come into play in chess. That does play an important role. So, with that said, I think I would be very much in favor of this, with the caveat that we must build a strong partnership between the city, the Urban Renewal Agency, and the county to really make this thing work as I would see it. I think it's possible to see that happen, and that's what I would encourage.
Thank you, Steve. All right. I would invite some of our elected officials to come up and ask questions. If you have any or concerns, we're not making a decision today, scheduled for tomorrow. We can, if there are changes, right now is the time to ask for them. Tomorrow we can, if there are changes, right now is the time to ask for them. Come on, Clerk Yamamoto. Right now is the time to ask. Come on, Clerk Yamamoto. Right now.
I can talk loud.
You are a good projector.
No. The Senator Brian Stainer would not be the only one in this room that has spoken against urban renewal in the past. You know, at some level, I've been involved in land use planning and development for the last 48 years. Here locally, Scottsdale, Arizona, Portland, Texas, North Dakota, South Dakota. I used to say quite often, if you're not growing, you're dying. South Dakota. But I've kind of changed my tune lately when I get in my car and drive down the road. And, you know, it's growing, the traffic is growing on a daily basis. We all see it. And to the point now, people's time when they go somewhere. My question would be, how much growth do you want? To the point people's time when they the proposed plant out, how much growth do you want? To the point in that area, the proposed plant out northwest here sounds like that would be a good thing for the agricultural community. But again, I wonder about the problem I have with urban renewal is, for a time, and it's a long time, it's 20 years, that all taxpayers to some degree subsidize that. So, I'm a little dismayed, in fact, I'm a lot dismayed, that here we are, the new RAA has had time to put this presentation together. We as a county we've not done the tax work on this, and you're voting on it tomorrow. I have a real problem with that. We've not done the tax work on this, and you're voting on it tomorrow. That's all I've got.
Specifically, what part would worry you about, like, our impact, the property tax impact? So the feasibility information that was provided about our impact, the property tax impact. So the feasibility information
that is a story in itself. I'd like to time to put that together.
What are we missing? So the feasibility information
that is a story in itself. I'd like to time to put that.
Commissioner Van Beek.
And I appreciate that. In the time that, from the last proposal in 2019 until today, and I appreciate that. And was that not sufficient time to provide some of this is basically the same proposal? And was that not sufficient time?
Well, do you think we might need to update? We could put something together pretty quickly. But to have this meeting, and I assume the plan would be tomorrow, no discussion, just a vote. To have this meeting, and I assume the plan would be tomorrow,
This meeting, so there'll be discussion.
Just a vote. To have this meeting.
Madam Chair, I would submit again that there's been 2 years for elected officials who have objected to this plan to come forward and provide additional information to the board that would either inform the Urban Renewal Committee of what their concerns are or provide feedback. But to the chair's point, this is taking an area that now generates basically $3,000 and taking that to almost $14 million. So I think the vision portion of that, the county will succeed as well as its city partners. And I really appreciate Mr. Lake being here today. He was interesting to talk to or listen to at the groundbreaking ceremony. His partnership with the city of Caldwell, they extended a welcome agreement. If I understand correctly, there was a 5-day turnaround time permitting process, which he said, I didn't even know they could do it, and they did. And it was a privilege for me as a commissioner to be a part of that groundbreaking and to, it's history in the making for 304,000 square feet. It sounds like you're going to be beat on that here shortly with the additional opportunities that are coming. But KTVB aired an interview with Mayor Nan Colbert, and it was on the success of his 24-year history in office. And he indicated that the longevity and the success of a community is the ability to provide jobs. That is a true statement. And so I think it requires a partnership and visionary leadership that says, we're not going to lose revenue on this, we're going to gain revenue long term. And that is pretty convincing for me as a commissioner. I have had the opportunity to attend early renewal meetings and to sit down with the team that's put this in place. I think they bring a lot of integrity. It's very, it's a great asset to have people to have sat on both ends of the table. Caldwell has been recognized nationally for what they bring to have development to the community. It's a great team, it's a well-read and a well-managed, and I don't see that there's been a lack of time for people that wanted to provide additional comments to submit that to the board. Caldwell team was patient, they were professional, they were willing to come back and join partnership with the county, which I think is admirable, and they've done it with a lot of diplomacy and grace. That to me is, that's a lot of information as a commissioner, and I appreciate what they put on.
Well, so far it looks like a completely incestuous affair to me. Thank you for your time.
And I appreciate
that. Doug or Mark, City of Caldwell's been hosting public meetings on the district, correct? City of Caldwell's been hosting public meetings on the district.
Commissioner Smith, the city has had an update on the district agenda as the attorney report. I believe for nearly every vertical meeting, I'm not sure how long, there will be a final public hearing on the plan of city report today. There has been a public hearing on the area and the declaration that is deteriorated. There have been related to the plan and the declaration that is deteriorated. There have been related to the plan, council on intergovernmental agreements. So yes, there have been public meetings on the plan of various aspects of it, enforcement agreements, progress and plan. There have been over the course of the past year on the plan. Maybe that was expressed, not Brad. There have been over the course of.
And do you know when the last time Assessor Spender was contacted to get information, like the county knew that you were when the last time Assessor moving forward and get information, got the tax information from us, correct? When the last time
I don't know when
got the tax information
contact was made with the last contact, either Carol or LJ. Would be able to provide that.
Carol, I think, just said August. Updated information was requested.
Is that first or last?
Carol, I think, just said August.
It was part of our
Updated information. Okay. Okay, I think my point with asking that, there has been opportunities for the county knew that you were doing it. And so there were opportunities beyond what's happening today. The county knew that you were doing to work with the Urban Renewal Agency, correct? What's happening, you're good.
There's been no attempt
To work with the Urban Renewal Agency, correct? What's happening, you're good.
Lots of meetings on it, lots of back and forth about it. The Caldwell's perspective is that this is a cooperative effort, back and forth about whether it's received by other citizens or individuals as that. That in fact what it is, what the real key. Mr. Holmes' plan, that's what his prior plan was, doing a cooperative effort with the expenses of that one. Mr. Holmes' an award they call it the right time was zone Chester and Carolina. So, an award we certainly perceive zone his current finance plan is cooperative as well.
Brian, not to put you on the spot, but one of the statements that was made by LJ was that this proposed, I think it was LJ, that the proposed area is a fraction of the current assessment. Was made by LJ. Do you know if that's true? I think it was LJ, that the proposed area is a fraction of the current. And what does a fraction mean? Do you know if that, it was implied to be, I know, it was implied to be a very, very small amount, but. Do you know if that, it was implied to be, I know, it was implied to be a very, very small amount.
I'm not exactly sure what the fraction, maybe it's the fraction of what will be.
The overall.
Eventually, what we're currently receiving tax base out there. There's a bunch of this area that's currently obsolete farm ground, which to me, there's a bunch of this area that's still upsetting that we're gonna come out well farm ground, but to me.
Cities do it all the time.
I know.
All the time.
Upsetting that we're gonna come out well farm ground, but.
It will.
And I wanna address Mr. Upsetting that we're 2 years ago. I wasn't, I'm not a huge fan of urban renewal, but I'm a bigger fan of having a shorter duration. I wasn't, not 20 years properly funded like this. The current one, having a shorter, could have paid it off earlier, paid off responsibilities, and then returned the current rent back to the property because I paid it off larger fan. That's my personal responsibility. So I'm not 100% against rent back urban renewal. There is a lot of that area out there. That's my personal responsibility. So far, against an effort. If you're driving down the freeway, it definitely doesn't keep the transform doing so far. But against an effort, if you're driving down the freeway, it definitely doesn't transform doing so far. I haven't received a copy of it.
Okay.
So I would, if I could get a copy of that so I can
review it.
I have the numbers around it.
Okay.
So if I could get a copy of that, so I can have 8 projects in line already for the ones I'm around it.
Okay.
So I'm wondering if he does in line already for the ones I'm around it. There is a possibility I paid off earlier because Caldwell's a great place and people are taking down the doors to get here. We have the shovel ready planned, so Caldwell's not disagreement. I'm just thinking on the doors to get, things to have all year, pay it off sooner, and do all the projects. Disagreement. I'm just thinking on the doors currently, things to have all year, pay it off sooner.
Commissioner Van Beek?
I would like to have LJ make, there's a question couched in there that I think we need answered on the bonding, and he was instrumental in the bonding process. But I want to make sure I understood the information correctly. Those bonds were in place and were they able to be paid off early as the insurance gave us the information correctly? Those bonds were in place and were they able to.
And Carol is probably the best one to address that because she's in that point now where they're paying them on. We scheduled those so that they were the lowest bond payment possible when we issued the bonds, so that we did not infringe upon the integrity of the revenue stream and take it below what it should be. We had to guarantee certain revenue in reserve when we put those bonds together. Now, certainly, if we were to have a stampede of development, I'm glad to hear what I heard today. If it built out in the first 10 years instead of the first 15, or even quicker than that, then those revenues are going to come in. And when they hit that point, that's the purpose of having commissioners from the city and the county say, when can we pull the trigger to de-annex?
If they do the budget, they would know when that's all paid off. They do the urban renewal budget too, so that's something to look at, because honestly, when we did the first urban renewal, de-annexation was not something that was on the table when I first started that 23 years ago. It's there now. De-annexation was so, this just says, is it feasible during the 20 years? It is. If it overperforms, if it goes sooner, it'll happen. This just says, there you go. During the 20 years, it is.
Go ahead, Doug.
If it overperforms,
So, to both points,
there you go.
the urban renewal plan of 2021 and not the urban renewal plan. A lot has changed since I was born, and,
Were you born in 92?
the current plan is that the legislature has required a level of specificity in urban renewal plans that was not required in the past. The current plan is that, what that means is when you look at this plan and the project list, what we have attempted to do is to contemplate every project and every project cost that may arise in that area. What we have attempted to do is to contemplate every project that may arise in that area. If this builds out immediately because of interest, and the projects that are contemplated are completed, there's nothing that we're allowed to do. There's nothing else that we're allowed to do. And so if that is 8 years from now, 10 years from now, or 19 years from now, whatever the case may be, in the year in which all of our projects are paid for, with the revenue we have, that's the year where we terminate the plan. And that's one of the changes. All of our projects are paid for. That's one of the things that will apply to this year where we terminate the plan. Apply in the past. I guarantee you that there's nothing that will apply to this county and city once more than to have this plan terminate in year 7, 8, or 9. That sounds great. That would mean that we got all our projects done, that area built out, and all that. That development goes back on the regular tax roll. That would mean that we got all our projects good for all our built out areas without all that. Development goes back on the regular tax roll. So, that's the goal.
Thank you. Commissioner Van Beek?
And I would say that that flexibility that you've talked about in releasing some of those projects
Commissioner Van Beek?
was in response to some of the concerns that were raised last time, and Caldwell bent over backwards and jumped through a number of hoops in order to accommodate the requests that were made. And I'm just going to say I felt like it was unfair for the city of Caldwell. The ability to have that plan perform or outperform is really a function, as you're indicating, Waterman, of the partnership that needs to exist to address the level of agriculture. And I really understand that's a partnership. It is a well-needed partnership that will benefit all the citizens of Canyon County. And so if we can join together to make that a reality for the citizens that we serve, and that's a win-win. And 20 years ago, when this plan was in place, whether we do it or not, the 20 years is going to pass. And how we envision our county and each city performing, that's a criticism that I've heard, that we're not partners. Yes, we are. We're partners with every city, which will probably now include STAR, to help them be the very best that they can be. And Canyon County, I've heard that, wants to be the very best that they can help them be the very best. That looks like for each elected official county, who is overseeing that, partnering together and augment that partnership to cooperation, civility, and respect for what it is that we're trying to accomplish in that partnership to cooperation.
So, Commissioner Van Beek, the extent that was, I think that was a question at the end, maybe semi-rhetorical, but Commissioner Van Beek, and most of the interaction with county staff is maybe semi-rhetorical, but what I can tell you is, at this point, is the interaction with county staff, objections notwithstanding, the staff you have and the legislators you have is very professional. What I can tell you is, the information is how it matters, and county staff objections notwithstanding, the staff you have, as we always are, is very professional. What I can tell you is, how it matters. Hopefully, concerns can be allayed as time goes forward, in a more holistic sense, but I have no doubt that concerns can be allayed as time goes forward, in a more holistic sense with passion. He would still provide the information these requirements go, and that seems to be true. And you think 100% passion, the city has had overall very good requirements go, and that seems to be true.
And when I attended the early renewal meeting, Mr. Sender was complimented a number of times for his cooperative and in providing information to the county. Mr. Sender was complimented a number of times.
Madam Chair, Mr. White, what if, you presented the whole thing to us, what, 2 years ago, did you say, Doug? Okay, what's the difference? You presented the whole thing to us, what? If I could just get the specifics of what is different right now from the last time it was presented. If I could just get the specifics of what is different right now from the last time it was presented.
I could, have, our public works come up and talk about maybe how designing and infrastructure has changed.
No, I understand the numbers and different things like that. I mean, it's obvious that numbers have changed and everything in 2 years. The whole world has turned upside down and shaken itself. So, I just want to know what, any major differences that you're bringing this back around. And the point is to be made, this is a pretty big document, and urban renewal is not EVA, okay? So, and we do vote tomorrow, I think, or something.
Let's let Brent, Brent can cover some of those changes, I think, quite quickly. And saying that Brent can talk quickly is like saying.
Are we on a time clock?
It's like saying I can talk quickly, however.
But I mean, are we on a time clock here?
We kind of are.
Are we on a time clock?
I bet you did.
But I mean, are we on a time clock here?
Mr. White. So essentially what's different, there are a couple of facets that are different. One, the area is a little bit different. Right, the law requires us to, we don't include agricultural property in the proposed allocation area unless the consent, the written consent of the owner is obtained. And so that, and then also.
And you have that.
Right. Then there's also, areas that have, some areas that have not been included that were last time, and some areas that have been included that weren't last time, on the basis of interest from industry, that showed interest in coming to Caldwell. And as a point of clarification, the 8 project, parcel is in Sky Ranch, it's the last parcel in Sky Ranch. But there have been multiple points of interest in this general area, including one that has a site selector on site today in that part of this area, who has expressed the importance of the allocation area now, that tax increment financing is, having infrastructure built is a big deal to them. In any case, to get specifically to your question, the change in the area and then also adapting to the things we learned last time when there were concerns expressed that we had not addressed, that we had missed, we were trying to be responsive to those concerns in what we proposed.
So for example, adding a person to the agency, including the provisions for the county to be able to fund infrastructure for the jail is included.
What area?
At the jail site.
Yes, and comment, because I'm a sewer guy, right? The comment on that, there is a sewer line out there. There's also a water line, but it would not be sufficient to support the area. You're gonna have to duplicate that lift station that's out there to support much industry or much growth out there, and the water needs to need additional water infrastructure, because that line is it's kind of like drinking from the end of a long straw out there at this point. So so we were excited for the prospect of being able to bring in the infrastructure that will allow us to happen. Sewer and water, they're in a form, gas, power, not at all adequate, lots of money to bring.
So for the record, the entire pond lane, acreage and all of that is in this new plan. So for the record, the entire pond lane.
And really quickly, and things that could be funded for that new jail would be infrastructure, including the water, power, sewer, gas. It could also include, just like what we did for the Fair Expo partnership, landscaping, parking areas, fencing, correct?
My understanding is the infrastructure stuff, absolutely. I would have to defer to Douglas on the legalities of what can be included. But I have talked to the mayor about this, and we're absolutely pleased to include anything that can legally be included with that project.
Commissioner Ramsey? I would say that this is a great selling point, a great marketing strategy, and I would be in support of moving forward with jail at that location because it's been included in the urban renewal, if those become more less certain, I guess inability to get certain things moving forward on that, so we have a work release program where there might be, I guess, places inability to employ people and retrain them or train them for the market is pretty exciting. So I think that's significant. It's worth highlighting. I don't know who brought that forward, but just, I think, I don't know, it's pretty exciting.
Doesn't matter.
It doesn't have significance. The point is that it's in there, and it's a great way for the county and the city and the urban renewal to move forward and really get that in place. And if we can benefit from each other's strengths and minimize each other's weaknesses, that's always a great partnership. Thank you for your recap. Benefit from each other's strengths and minimize.
If you're willing to let me add one more thing, I would like to share.
Okay, you got 30 seconds.
Okay, that would just be that, another thing that's different about the plan is, last time you gave me some feedback on some of the things we had proposed in the plan, a parking structure. We took that out, and I want to tell you why we included something like that, which is like, why would you do that? You know, are we really gonna do a parking structure? The way that the law works, we've got to put into the plan anything that might be built with it. And so, that was probably out there, so it's out now. Thank you.
Brian, got a question for Brett before I leave?
Yeah, so there is.
Talk loud,
There is
Brian.
something parking related.
Got a question for Brett before I leave? I hope so, because we need a parking lot for the jail. Talk loud,
There is
Brian.
something parking related.
Yeah, so infrastructure, actually Rob probably should address that.
Talk loud.
Yeah, so infrastructure, actually Rob probably should address that.
Hi, Rob.
Madam Chair, Commission. Rob McDonald, I'm the city engineer for the city of Caldwell. Just to answer your question, there's accommodation in there for some part of the city. Public parking is that answer your question of the public and the location where accommodation in there for some part of the city. Public parking is that answer your question of the public.
In that revenue allocation area, it can't be outside of it. So it couldn't be moved to have a parking structure for this facility, if that's where you're going. So it couldn't be moved
Okay,
to
great.
have a parking structure for this facility,
Okay, so,
if that's where you're
and
going.
there's development outside the park, so it could be additional parking spaces around the park. So,
If that's where you're
and
going.
there's development outside the park, so it could be about parking right spaces around the park.
Yes, all of those, anything within the allocation area, wherever the park is, it could, yes, all of those, anything within the allocation area. Wherever the park is, it could, yes, all of those, anything within the allocation.
Thank you.
Thanks, Rob.
Controller Wagner. Thank you. You want to come back?
Thanks, Rob.
That's one more quick question.
Yes. Zach, are you good? You're in the hot seat, so you're next. We'll have like a,
One more quick question. Thank you, Commissioner. One question.
you're in the hot seat, so
If
you're
I can get a
next.
copy.
We'll have like a, absolutely.
So I see there's admin costs in there, and there's economic development costs. There's there's admin costs in there, since there's partnership, what's the outlook possibility, some of that's coming to help fund our new economic development partnership, what's the outlook? I'm sure that Mr. Bolt to help fund our new, whoever that economic development position is, county will be participating in, I'm sure that Mr. Bolt to help fund our new,
Can I
whoever that
speak to that?
following where I'm going.
I am following, and I can really appreciate it. However, when we pitched the idea for the Canyon County Economic Development, we really talked a lot about that Caldwell and Nampa have adequate teams. And, our goal was to support the other small cities and, the rural agricultural areas. But to your point, we're also working with the urban renewal in this area, so. I
get the statement, but the majority of this area today
Today is there.
in Canyon County, but
And the same is true, I'm sorry, I keep talking. The same is true for Sky Ranch. Sky Ranch was originally mostly in Canyon County, yet Caldwell Economic Development took the lead on even the county project. And even when I was there, we worked a lot on county property for the county that was to be future annexed. Agreed?
Madam Chair, if I interject this as well. And I cited earlier this, project that Matt cited today. One of the components of that discussion was that tag team opportunity and effort that we would have between city economic development and the county's economic development in these areas that are certainly in unincorporated areas. There's money that's available, I certainly wouldn't turn it down. But I do believe that it certainly needs to be a concerted effort between the two organizations and operations and community tag team these efforts.
Is that even possible? Okay.
And I think it's possible because really you're dealing with a couple of things that the city has no control of, such as property taxes. The county is kind of controlling position that the city has control. Other ones you make decisions. As an example, land use is another one where we may be able to take a look at other opportunities within these areas for land use is another one where we may be able to take a look at incentives that may be available through that. So, yeah, I think it's very, very possible.
So let's put that out there and then get a recommendation from the Caldwell team tomorrow on that. That's fair.
Madam Chair,
Commissioner White?
I'm going to ask because I know that Mr. Waite, when he was talking to us, he made a point of saying when he heard that the city of Caldwell had an economic development director and Canyon County had one, that it brought an excitement, or however he said that. So what's he referring to, you see? When he said, I don't mean to put you on the spot and you can give me this, but what's he referring to, you see?
Again, if I were to interpret it, since we are in the process of hiring an economic development specialist, one of the visions and desires I've had in filling this position, not only has the positions addressing the building and the planning and the code enforcement, but also on the economic development. So it all kind of ties together and developing these close relationships. The county itself has never had an economic development person. We've always counted on Western Lights for development, which is kind of a multi-county area. So I see that very much as that opportunity to partner with them, to bring some expertise that I bring, as well as maybe the new person we're going to be training up in partnership. So, the proverbial, two heads are better than one. I think that's kind of the process we look at and make it a business. No, certainly some of the partnerships we've had in economic development rely heavily on private commerce. They have a certain role that they play. We talk about Boise Valley Economic Partnership. They have a role they play. All these different groups in their partnerships have roles to play. I think we have a role, a very important role to play in economic development when it comes to things such as this. And if Milton were to move forward as an example with a revenue allocation area that would be outside their city limits, I think that's a role that we would want to move forward them as well. So while certainly some of the idea and focus was on some of those smaller communities and assisting them in strategic planning and things like that, I think also a partnership with our larger, the Nampa, the Caldwell, Milton, saying, again, I tend to use it, but we're a team that works together. It's not just a team that's developing, it's a team that's Canyon County and Caldwell and Nampa, all of us are a team that work together and building Canyon County. Does that make sense?
It doesn't. I'm just jealous of your time. I just want to protect that because you've taken on a huge burden for the county here, and I appreciate that so much. So, yeah, good for you.
You were born in 1992.
Yeah.
Great idea. Can you, Zach's coming up, but, I think we're good. Can you, Zach's coming up. Well, let's go, Zach. I think we're good.
Thank you, Madam Chair, Commissioners. I would like to ensure that I have Thank you. A peaceful Thanksgiving dinner with my younger brother.
Oh.
So I'll do my best to be respectful with my question here. Thanksgiving dinner with my younger brother. 1,000 acres.
So for the record, your brother is Darrell Wagner, who is on the ballot for the mayor of Caldwell,
That would be my younger brother.
who has vocally supported the agency, is on the ballot for the
We
mayor.
have had some initial conversations about my younger brother.
Okay, vocally supported the agency. Oh!
Initial conversations about it.
Okay, go ahead, sorry.
The 1,000 acres, as it is developed, I've heard there will be mixed use, industrial, 1,000 acres, apartments developed. My question is, mixed use, that will result in an increased demand for county services. My question is, mixed use, how will those county services be paid for county services? The property taxes paid by those new developments paid for will be allocated to the urban renewal agency. Paid by those, they will not come to the county. That is a disruption and interruption in our revenue stream. My question is, as growth happens, as apartments are built, as the apartments and the residents and as growth, county provided services, apartments are built, how are those county provided services paid for? County provided.
Do you have any data that like Sky Ranch and North Ranch, that they have caused a burden on public services? Sky Ranch and
The current
North
urban
Ranch, that they
renewal
have
is bigger than
caused a
just Sky
burden on.
Ranch. There are a large number of residential developments in the existing revenue allocation area.
Yeah, that's true, because it expanded beyond Sky Ranch.
Bigger than just Sky Ranch.
And so this one, we're at 1,000 acres and primarily industrial and reclamation of the gravel pit. And so you do see that this is gonna be a burden?
I get the reference to possible apartment complexes, and yeah, I do see that growth will cause increased costs for county provided services. I do see that growth.
Specifically emergency services, or which services?
I think all types of county services, public safety services,
Specifically emergency services, or which services?
property tax, administration, billing, collection, all types of county services.
And then so one of the services that we're lacking on is a jail. And this would be one funding source to meet that need, correct? That we don't currently have.
I believe taxpayers have been asked if they want increased property taxes for a jail.
They don't currently have.
Spoken, and they said, no, this is property tax, increased property tax. Is this a backdoor property tax to fund a jail?
I don't think it's backdoor property tax, it's the only method that's out there currently that the legislature has approved. So it's not backdoor because it's legal. Method that.
We have the opportunity to ask for a bond.
So it's not backdoor because it's legal.
And we've been told, we know, repeatedly, no increased property tax to pay for a jail.
Right.
Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek?
And the biggest obstacle that I heard was there was 190 of them who chose not to go out to an RFP process. And so I think that there's a little bit more to the story that I would submit that would have to be told with that note. I would want somebody, and perhaps Mr. Wade, if I'm looking at his assessed year and the gross increment revenue that will be provided in year 2024, it's $1,246,225 increment. So, Mr. Wade, can you speak to that? With that, that's the increment revenue that goes to the urban renewal area. But it does not diminish the amount of urban revenue that we're currently receiving. So, I mean, I think there's kind of a counterweight there, and again, the question would have to be asked, what do you see as the need for in an industrial area, increased services have to be asked. So we don't have that information, evidently not a thought area, increased services provide support for your statement. I'm not trying to put you on the spot, but, that would be the right thing, is to with information that proves that, and I hear the residential portion of that, but I also heard that it was higher in residential development, which tends to have a lower fallout services. I also heard that it was higher in, sometimes I feel this, but in the analysis of paralysis, trying to anticipate what this triple, given the analysis of the potential value and pluses, if I just calculate it on the lawyer scale, I would say that the potential are outweighed and projections, and within the budget hearing, what I heard was an increase in salaries, just as there would be increased revenues, either from sales tax or other revenue sources increase. So salaries, just as there would be increased revenues. In the absence of any hard information, I would say that this would represent less risk than the absence of any ideas for legal income housing. This would represent less risk.
Madam Chair, the $1.2 million goes directly to the urban renewal agency. That money does not come to the county, to the highway district, to the school districts. My concern, my thought would be for residential property taxpayers. We have heard repeatedly from residential property taxpayers about their property tax bills skyrocketing.
Tell me, I get that, and I know what you're saying, but tell me about the impact with the current revenue allocation area sunsetting. And I know what you're saying, but tell me about the difference from the original value to the value now. What impact will that make to the taxpayer? The difference from the original value to the value now. What impact will that make to the taxpayer?
We decide to do with our property tax dollars.
To the value now. What impact
We can leave our property tax dollars the same. That new value would then drive down the levy rate. That would benefit all county property taxpayers. That new value or you could increase our property tax dollars to reflect what's currently being paid to the urban. You could increase. It's our choice.
And then was that another funding mechanism for the jail?
It's our choice. It could be a funding mechanism for the jail. It could be a mechanism to provide some property tax relief, the current property tax for the jail. It could be a mechanism to provide.
Could be one or the other. We also are missing an adequately sized jail. And so it's also our job to fund that. We also are missing, so either one though, but jail. So that's another funding mechanism, potentially, is when that sunsets, capitalizing on that. That's another funding mechanism, potentially, is when that sunsets. All right, capitalizing on that.
And that is a different discussion.
It is a different one. Is when that sunsets. All right. Okay, do you feel like your Thanksgiving dinner is gonna be okay still?
It absolutely will be okay, yeah.
Okay. Is when that sunsets. All right. Okay, do you feel like your Thanksgiving dinner is gonna be okay? We are a little past time that we allocated. Okay. Would anyone else like to add anything? We are a little past time that we allocated. Brent? Would anyone else like to? Don't bring your PowerPoint, but you can come back up. Don't bring your PowerPoint, you can come back up.
Thank you very much. Commissioners, I think Zach's questions they're fair questions. Thank you very much. There's just a couple of things that could be helpful possibly. The indications that we think we have from our discussions with folks out there are that the creation of an allocation area, would probably prompt an annexation path of the stuff that's closest to the city. And that's where we've had chief talk to us about possibly apartment location. That's not to say that we know, and we're not in control of that. We're not, urban renewal is not a land the county is and the city, council is, and we're not in control. But that's one possible solution, that's mitigation. Another thing to maybe look at is the proportion of tax that missing that is drawing upon those services, especially I think for the services. Well, kind of bear that in mind is drawing upon the idea of allocation area. And lastly, one way to think of this is because of the at least reality that we've seen with the current allocation area, bringing about way higher, tax base at the end of the day, which is, which came with job creation and a lower tax burden for the public in general, because you have this big value density that comes with industrial. You also have, possibly a time for us to think of a way of investing in ourselves. We're investing in ourselves, and we're gonna eke by with, maybe some less revenue for those services during the life of the allocation area. And then finally, that frankly, once those properties are developed to the point that LJ made earlier, that once they're developed out, perhaps a partial annexation, we have to lean on you guys, because I don't know if partial annexation is possible or without words, but there are a couple of ways that it could be out. For summary, annexation into the city would mean the city would have to provide those services that are in question, and the annexation from the agency once it is once there's no option to at least the possibility to make the annexation from the
And you do provide most of the services, I will agree, but we do have to house your inmates. We do have to send out your tax notices. We do a lot for dispatch services and it's back to what Doug keeps saying. We all work together really well, and we're all providing services. So thank you. All right. So thank you. Zach, all right. Do you have anything that you would like legally, you've had a chance, from our perspective, what safeguards, do you feel like we should be evaluating, from our perspective?
Madam Chair, I've had the opportunity to review documents that have been provided, and they are very similar to the documents that we reviewed and they are very similar to that proposal. So they do provide a path to accomplish this. And they are very similar to that proposal. So I guess on the agenda for tomorrow, the board would take up in a series of actions. So first, make a declaration about this area so that it falls under the urban renewal definition. So that's part of the process. And then there's a transfer of power agreement between the county and the city that would basically turn over the county's authority in this area for these urban renewal purposes to the city. And so I think the biggest change between these agreements now and the way they have worked in 2019 is the language in here that would require the city to appoint a county representative to the urban renewal agency. So I guess my review is limited. It's limited to the form of the documents that are prepared, and will they accomplish what you've set out here to do? And I can say, yeah, you're ready to go on that end. And that's not a review of the entirety of the plan or any of the work that's been done to get you to by a review of the entirety.
And then on the release of power, could you just, for the record, give a little bit about what that means? It's not about the zoning or it doesn't change our joint impact area agreement. It's about the allocation of tax dollars.
That's correct. And Director Foltz had made some comments that I'm going to work to get incorporated into another draft for tomorrow. I think that lawyers are looking at this, it's clear, but what authorities are transferred, that I think there are there'd be some benefit from some clarity about the zoning authority in particular. Just making it explicit that, until annexation occurs or there's an area of impact agreement, the zoning doesn't change in this area unless it goes through the county zoning process. And I guess that would be, same and true for, the services in the area. And I guess that would be, the sheriff's office, until the, city of Caldwell annexes and provides, the law enforcement out there, the sheriff's office is the primary, law enforcement entity to respond. That doesn't change, because it's out there, the sheriff's office is the primary.
Any other questions?
No, thank you, Madam Chair.
That doesn't change, because it's out there.
Okay. Last chance.
No, thank you, Madam Chair. Madam Chair.
Commissioner Van Beek?
I just want to thank everyone for being here and being part of the process. The City of Caldwell did partnership and the community and for the elected officials and our staff that joined us. The City of Caldwell did partnership and
All right,
the community.
4:56, and that completes this meeting. Hey, Doug? Hey, Doug?